The burden of gout, a painful inflammatory arthritis, has risen considerably, now affecting millions of Americans. Gout is now the most common inflammatory arthritis in men and older women. In my video, Gout Treatment with a Cherry on Top, I profiled new research suggesting that even as little as a half a cup of cherries a day may significantly lower the risk of gout attacks. Fresh cherries aren't always in season, though, so I listed a few alternatives, and frozen appeared second best, with cherry juice concentrate the runner-up. But does concentrated cherry juice actually help prevent attacks of gout? We didn't know until now. The first pilot study was a randomized controlled trial, cherry juice concentrate versus pomegranate juice concentrate as a control, for the prevention of attacks in gout sufferers who were having as many as 4 attacks a month. The cherry group got a tablespoon of cherry juice concentrate twice a day for 4 months, and the control group got a tablespoon of pomegranate juice concentrate twice a day for 4 months. The number of gout flares in the cherry group dropped from an average of 5 down to 2, better than the pomegranate group, which only dropped from about 5 to 4. And about half of those in the cherry group who were on prescription anti-inflammatory drugs were able to stop their medications within 2 months after starting the cherry juice, as opposed to none of the patients in the pomegranate juice group. The second study was a retrospective investigation over the longer term. 24 gout patients went from having about 7 attacks a year down to 2. The researchers conclude cherry juice concentrate is efficacious for the prevention of gout flares. Certainly large, long-term randomized controlled trials are needed to further evaluate the usefulness of cherries and cherry juice concentrate for gout flare prophylaxis, but in the meanwhile, are cherries now ripe for use as a complementary therapeutic in gout? This commentator is of the opinion that the current state of evidence remains insufficient to formally recommend cherry fruit or cherry products as a complementary therapeutic remedy for gout. Why not? Can you guess who this guy is? This commentator is also a paid consultant of 9 different drug companies, all of which manufacture gout medications. I understand how the pharmaceutical industry can get nervous seeing studies where half of patients were able to stop taking their gout drugs, given the billions of dollars at stake. But what's the downside of eating a half a cup of cherries a day, or worse comes to worse, a few spoonfuls of cherry juice? The Fruit Commission of Washington State, our largest cherry producer, can fund reviews cherry-picking studies on the anti-inflammatory effects of cherries in a petri dish and animal models, but what we need are human studies. For example, if you stuff the human equivalent of up to 1,000 cups of cherries down the throats of rats, it appears to have an anti-inflammatory effect, but we couldn't eat that many, and in fact, if we tried, it could end up badly. This is a case report of a poor guy who ate 500 cherries whole without spitting out the pits, which ended up fatally obstructing his colon. But we didn't have many human studies until now. Men and women were asked to eat about 45 cherries a day for a month. I wouldn't mind being part of that study. 25% drop in C-reactive protein levels, as well as an inflammatory protein with an inelegant acronym, regulated on and activation normal, T-cell expressed and secreted. That's actually the name. As you can see, even a month after the study ended, there appeared to be residual anti-inflammatory benefit from the Cherry Fest. Now, these were all healthy people with low levels of inflammation to begin with, but the same was found in a follow-up study on folks with higher levels, a solid 20% drop in C-reactive protein, and a number of other markers for chronic inflammatory diseases. But how about trying out cherries on people who actually have a chronic inflammatory disease to see if they actually work? Well, back in 1950, in an obscure Texas medical journal, observations made by responsible physicians suggested that in a dozen patients with gout, eating half a pound of fresh or canned cherries helped prevent flares of gout, but it had never been seriously tested until now. Gout is an excruciatingly painful inflammatory arthritis caused by the crystallization of uric acid in our joints, affecting 8 million Americans. Such attacks cause tremendous pain, as famously captured in this caricature. Hundreds of gout sufferers studied, and cherry intake was associated with a 35% lower risk of gout attacks, with over half the risk gone at 3 servings, measured over a 2-day period, which comes out to be about 16 cherries a day. That's the kind of efficacy they saw with a low-purine diet. Uric acid is a breakdown product of purines. The same research group found that purine intake of animal origin increased the odds for recurrent gout attacks by nearly 5-fold. Heavy alcohol consumption isn't a good idea either. Now, there are some high-purine non-animal foods, like mushrooms and asparagus, but they found no significant link to plant sources of purines, so they recommended eliminating meat and seafood from the diet. That may decrease risk, and adding cherries on top may decrease risk of gout attacks even further. Same thing with the leading drug. Allopurinol works, but pills and produce appear to work even better. And dietary changes in cherries may be all many patients have, as doctors are hesitant to prescribe uric acid-lowering drugs like allopurinol due to rare but serious side effects, including the most feared of all drug side effects, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which can detach our skin from our body. I will spare you the photos. In addition to fighting inflammation, cherries may actually help lower uric acid levels as well. Within 5 hours of eating a big bowl of cherries, uric acid levels in the blood significantly drop. At the same time, antioxidant levels in the blood go up as vitamin C levels start to rise. So is it just an antioxidant effect? Would other fruit work just as well? No. They tried grapes, strawberries, and kiwi fruit, and none significantly lowered uric acid levels, supporting a specific anti-gout effect of cherries. There are some new gout drugs out now, costing up to $2,000 per dose, and also carries a risk of toxicity that may be avoided by using non-pharmacological treatments or prevention in the first place. Given the potential harms and high costs, attention ought to be directed to dietary modification, reducing alcohol and meat intake, particularly sardines and organ meats. And hey, if life serves up a bowl of cherries, consumed on a regular basis, the risk of a recurrent gout attack may be meaningfully reduced.